All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Johnson is now presiding.
Please be seated. Today we are hearing the case of Anti-Tech Allison versus Information Technology Tim. Anti-Tech Allison alleges that IT Tim is responsible for having a negative impact on the public's beliefs about vaccinations. Anti-Tech Allison, please present your opening remarks.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Internet is a platform for debate on vaccines. Anyone can create content and share it broadly without evidence or credentials. Anti-vaccination groups have blossomed in this environment, reaching an audience of 31 million people on Facebook and 17 million people on YouTube in 2020 alone. When people search vaccines on Google, 71% of the links they are provided speak negatively about vaccines. Today, we will show you that people are disproportionately bombarded with negative information about vaccines because of unregulated uses of information technology. In 2021, information technology is being used to sway the willingness of people to get vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you, Anti-Tech Allison. Now we'll hear from the defendant, Information Technology Tim.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are here to argue that since the internet is used so widely, IT's ability to help ordinary people make more informed decisions has an overall positive effect on beliefs about vaccinations. This is evidenced by the websites of reputable sources for vaccine information receiving huge amounts of traffic. An example of such a website is America's CDC, shown here on this graph to receive nearly 1 billion visits per year. We observe that the views of its page spike in times of epidemics. With this evidence, it's undeniable that IT has a role in the spread of scientifically backed information about disease, and by extension, vaccines.
Thank you, Information Technology Tim. We will now move to the direct examination of the plaintiff's first witness, Arpan Nupani, candidate for a PhD in immunology from the University of Calgary.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Nupani, you have closely followed vaccination news over the last 2 decades in your research, have you not?
Yes, exactly.
So, Mr. Nupani, you would be familiar with the 1998 paper published in Lancet Journal linking vaccinations for mumps, measles, and rubella to autism. The study was found to be deeply flawed, but regardless of its inaccuracies, it became a major argument used by the anti-vaccination community. What do you think the fallout would have been if there was no information technology to spread this information?
Well, the response from the general public would potentially have been as large, but in a longer time scale. Having the information easily accessible, as well as rapidly accessible, I think made it so that the response to this particular paper happened in a much grander scale, but also much faster.
So overall, do you think information technology, in this case the internet, had a positive effect on people's beliefs about vaccination, or a negative effect with this particular instance?
So it definitely had a negative impact in the public's perception on how vaccination potentially lead to development of diseases. And this paper focused on autism particularly, but at that point the damage was already done, and would now theorize multiple different diseases could be attributed to vaccination without any potential proof or evidence.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Nupani. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Allison. We will now move to the cross-examination from the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I begin, I'd like to point out that it's not the job of information technology to regulate the information people receive. IT provides people the means to freely speak their minds, and healthcare systems are free to invest in the promotion of vaccine-positive content on IT channels. In a randomized control trial with pregnant women, Glantz et al. Found that those who experienced interactive educational social media interventions were more likely to have their child up to date with vaccines at 6 months of age compared to those who did not. Now, Mr. Nupani, what steps do you think the healthcare community needs to take to combat harmful messages about vaccines?
I think the most important step that to take is to make information not only easily accessible to general public in terms of access to the research, also easily accessible in terms of language.
Right. IT cannot and should not be responsible for this. In fact, where do you see the burden being placed in terms of regulating misinformation? Is it on healthcare workers, the government, or individual companies like Facebook, Twitter, or Google?
I think the burden should lie on all three, so companies, healthcare workers, as well as the government. Simply because only a single party cannot police regulate all of the information. For example, Let's take Google, for instance. They may be able to regulate some of information by doing fact checking, but who's doing this fact checking? It's mostly going to be either healthcare workers or at least sources provided by the healthcare workers.
Exactly. Whether IT has a positive or negative effect on people's beliefs about vaccinations will depend on many parties. IT cannot be solely put to blame. Thank you, Mr. Newpain. No further questions, Your Honor.
Now we will call to the stand the defense's witness. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Scientist Sally, and I represent the scientific community that has published its findings in recent medical journals.
Scientist Sally, thank you for appearing in court today. Can you tell us about another article titled Measuring Vaccine Confidence, Analysis of Data Obtained by a Media Surveillance System Used to Analyze Public Concerns about Vaccines? It was published recently in the Lancet Journal in 2013.
Sure. The study used a media surveillance system to analyze public concerns about vaccines in 10,380 reports across 144 countries. The world map here represents countries in deeper shades of red the more negative these reports were toward vaccines. 69% of the reports surveyed had a positive or neutral attitude toward vaccines. It was found that these reports were spreading public confidence in vaccination trials and echoing the opinions of scientific experts on the subject. For the remaining 31% of negative opinions, one of the top concerns was that the vaccine trial results were being misrepresented. The study concluded that by using their media surveillance system, immunization programs could quickly identify regions with public concerns so that they could address them directly with scientifically backed evidence.
Thank you, Scientist Sally. The defense rests, Your Honor.
Thank you. Antitech Allison, please proceed with your cross-examination.
31% of negative articles is hard to ignore. That amounts to almost 3,000 negative articles worldwide. Scientist Sally, could you discuss the following survey? Internet exposure associated with Canadian parents' perception of risk on childhood immunization, cross-sectional study?
This study, published in 2018, found that vaccine information through social media campaigns has been shown to negatively impact individuals' perception of vaccines. 951 parents were surveyed in Canada to examine their vaccine beliefs after searching the internet for information. After adjusting for demographic factors, the odds of receiving vaccines as less safe were twice as high for parents who use the internet to search for vaccine information compared to parents who did not.
Therefore, the internet increases the risk that parents will be vaccine hesitant as they are less convinced of the safety and value of immunizations for their children. Sally, could you also discuss media representation of vaccine side effects and its impact on utilization of vaccine services in Vietnam?
I'd be happy to. This study asked 429 respondents questions regarding an expanded program on immunization where vaccines are offered for free and adverse events following immunization, with survey results summarized in the table here. A telling statistic showed that 68.2% of respondents said they would be hesitant to take the vaccine after hearing about AEFIs from technologically enabled media.
Your Honor, you've heard it for yourself here. This study emphasizes how inaccurate negative information, even if it is the minority, can turn people's beliefs towards vaccines negative. How can we let information technology continue to propagate the nonsense that it does in this unrestricted and unregulated way?
Objection, Your Honor. There is growing regulation in the IT space. Twitter has committed to the use of labels and warning messages to provide additional context and information on tweets that contain disputed or misleading information. On Facebook, repeatedly sharing claims like COVID-19 is man-made or manufactured, and it's safer to get the disease than to get the vaccine, can cause groups, pages, or even individual accounts to be removed from Facebook altogether. This will have a further reaching impact than just the COVID-19 vaccine, as more general claims such as vaccines cause autism will also be removed or flagged to the same degree.
It is true that there is some regulation. However, Antitech Allison's comments will not be stricken from the record. Your closing remarks, Antitech Allison.
Your Honor, Information technology is a new space that, while great for communication, is dangerous for the scientifically accurate beliefs of people regarding vaccines. In fact, the highly unregulated nature of information technology means that certain groups of people are being left behind to believe any wildly inaccurate information they see on social media. As such, information technology, Tim, should be charged with contributing negatively to beliefs about vaccinations. I rest my case, Your Honor.
And now your closing remarks, information technology, Tim.
Your Honor, these studies support the idea that IT is giving people access to scientifically accurate information like never before. The more IT helps scientifically backed information be spread, the greater the positive impact IT will have on beliefs about vaccinations. It is not the job of IT to regulate which information is spread. It simply provides a platform to connect people around the world. The defense rests.
So now that you have the facts about the impact of information technology on beliefs about vaccinations, what do you think, Judge Johnson?
You be the judge.